Hey friends, hope you're doing well, enjoying this Thursday. That's as mundane as I'm getting today. Anyways, let's talk about hot news. We got a good deal to chat about. Chat away. Okay, I'm done with the jokes. Let's talk about Polyphony Digital. And in case you don't know who they are, have you heard of the wee old game called Gran Turismo? Well, yes, they're the makers behind Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was there a 6? In sport. Well, apparently at SIGGRAPH Asia in 2018, they had unveiled that they are working on real-time ray tracing technology for potential upcoming titles. They actually even have a demo of it running, which was finally uploaded to the internet like a week ago, basically. In the video, you can see the ray tracing actually happening on the cars, which this is all curious because Polyphony Digital makes games like Gran Turismo that are Sony exclusives. They don't make PC games. So why are they doing this at all if they don't have ray tracing? And that's where we get the hype that I'm talking about. We might actually be getting ray tracing on the upcoming generation of consoles with PlayStation 5 and potentially with the Xbox 2 or the One Plus, whatever they're gonna call it. So one of the reasons that we think this could be happening is because of the way that Polyphony has decided to implement ray tracing in the Gran Turismo demo, and it has nothing to do with using ray tracing cores. It has nothing to do with using tensor cores. It's actually using a compute model, which does give it a little bit of slowness during the demo, but if the hardware of the next generation of consoles is anywhere near where we think it should be, not the 4K 240 FPS that we talked about in a previous video, but more around the 4K 60 region, if it's anything like that with the upcoming Navi graphics cards, we might actually be able to see ray tracing done by these cards with no use of ray tracing cores or tensor cores in a way that actually makes it look pretty dang good and run at console frame rates. We've already come to accept 30 FPS on consoles, so what's the difference if you have 30 FPS with or without ray tracing? It's what us plebs have come to expect. On PC, it's a different story. You can't go back from 60 FPS. You can't do that to us in video. And we've already seen in yesterday's hot news episode that you don't need ray tracing cores to even run ray tracing in the first place. The Titan V does as well as the RTX 2080 Ti, even though it has no ray tracing cores in Battlefield 5. And of course, all of what NVIDIA showed off with ray tracing before Turing was announced was done with Volta. So Volta, which never had any ray tracing cores, could actually run ray tracing pretty well. So this is exciting. Combine that with also the fact that Microsoft has talked about using DirectML, which is direct machine learning, in a way that's similar to NVIDIA's deep learning super sampling. As you can see here, they just upscale the image from 1080p to 4K by just running it through machine learning, as does it work with deep learning super sampling on NVIDIA's side, and then it comes out so that they can render the image at a higher resolution without any image quality loss, essentially. There are some minor drawbacks here and there, but you get performance of 1080p while rendering it out at 4K. And if Microsoft can bring this to the new Xbox, and then the ray tracing technology that Polyphony is working on, and we could presume that other developers are actually working on, we might see the hype of ray tracing, which isn't working out so great on PC right now, come to consoles. But one of the things that we need to remember with all of this is that it's easy to poo-poo it because ray tracing on PCs have been trash, because they're not implemented properly. Ray tracing cores aren't even being used in the ray tracing games that are out. Maybe Metro Exodus might change this when it comes out next month, but we're not actually implementing everything properly. And if we can get our graphics cards to actually do that, and by us, I mean, game developers, actually take advantage of all of the leveraging that these new computer graphics things have. I'm speaking like somebody from the 1910s who just found out about a car. 1930s. These newfangled techs, nah, jeez. Me and my horse and buggy, we fine. This Henry Ford's a hack. Anyways, my point is, ray tracing is in its infancy. You don't need all of the hype that NVIDIA has put around it, but it does look like consoles have been actively developing it. Microsoft working on DirectML to get the machine learning and upscaling part of it down so that you can render at lower resolutions, upscale to normal resolutions, and then have faster frame rate. And it looks like Polyphony Digital is finding a way to make hardware run ray tracing without ray tracing cores in a pretty effective manner. It also could be that Sony and Microsoft might implement something like Power VR into their upcoming consoles to run ray tracing dedicatedly. That's not a word. And in case you don't remember who Power VR is, we did a video on this a while back in August, I think, when the ray tracing cards came out, showing that something that was comparable to a smartphone GPU was actually running ray tracing at about the level of an RTX 2070. It's just a dedicated chip for ray tracing as opposed to what NVIDIA is doing. It's a whole lot of hype. We might get more realistic looking games coming in the future. It just needs to be implemented properly. I can get excited for this if it actually works properly. The price doesn't come up because as soon as Sony starts charging us $700 for their base level PlayStation 5 because it can do ray tracing, that's when I flip the table, because that's the NVIDIA model of doing things. And I hope that we don't have to endure that with the upcoming console generation, because I definitely want Last of Us 2 to be ray traced. And the Final Fantasy VII remake, I want that ray traced too. And Kingdom Hearts 4 if that ever comes out. Please. So that's enough about ray tracing. Let's talk about AMD, even though we were just talking about AMD because they make the console stuff. Anyways, it appears that a Russian e-tailer has actually leaked some of the specs of the upcoming Ryzen 3000 series CPUs. As you can see here, they're based on Matisse, and the store has a 3600X, 3600, 3700X, 3700, and the 3800X, all listed, 8 cores, 16 threads. It's basically a one-for-one copy of the Adore TV leak. And in case you don't remember, that was pretty mind-blowing that we should be expecting 16 cores, 32 threads, 4.7 gigahertz boost for around $450. We covered it all in a video that you can watch right up there. But I'm super skeptical on this listing. It's kind of cool that somebody has listed it, but at the same time, it looks like a copy and paste. So I would guess, we saw this happening with the new NVIDIA graphics cards. People were listing things when obviously they didn't have access to any of it, and it could be the same information here. It's very easy to make a listing, especially when there's no product boxes. Everything's just a blanket, Ryzen CPU stock image. There's nothing showing off that this is the 3000 series. They could just list it. I can make a website listing all of these CPUs. There's not a whole lot of information to go on here. And then I also want to talk about another leak that has popped up on Twitter. It doesn't seem to be getting that much traction, but I did see it around. It's this clearly doctored image of the CPU support on the Gigabyte X470 Aorus Gaming 7 Wi-Fi motherboard. It shows that it has support for the Ryzen 7 3700, 3700X, and the Ryzen 9 3800X, which all seems well and good, except for when you actually go to the page, it doesn't exist, and as far as I can tell, it's just a bad Photoshop. That's everything that's happening here. So if you see this one, don't believe it. There's no motherboards that officially support it as of yet, officially out on the internet, at least of the time of recording. There might be new leaks before this comes out. Who knows? I'm hyped for Ryzen 3000 series. We only have about a week to go. January 7th is when we're supposed to have the AMD keynote, but both of these leaks don't seem like real leaks. It seems like it's all based off of the stuff that happened with Adore TV a couple weeks ago. So I'm holding my breath and we'll see what actually happens in just a couple days. Do you have a Chromecast? Well, you might want to check and see if it's running. That was a mixture of two really bad jokes. I'm sorry, my friends. It appears that hackers known as the hacker giraffe, who also hacked printers to print out Subscribe to Pewdiepie and to let people know that their hackers or that their printers are compromised. He's done that with Chromecasts and smart TVs as well, showing that your router is compromised. You should probably fix it, giving a link to actually find out how to fix it, but then also urging everybody to subscribe to Pewdiepie. So that's nice. He's doing a public service and trying to get more subs. It's genius. Do you own an iPhone? I don't know what's up with these segues, but Apple has revealed that their earnings from last quarter maybe weren't so good and that they could miss $9 billion in iPhone sales due to weak demand. There are some headlines going around saying that Apple says this is because of batteries, and that's just not what Tim Cook said at all. He did indicate that the battery issue of previous iPhones, which has raised the cost of battery replacements, has had an impact, but that's not the primary reason. In fact, in the interview, Tim Cook said that lower than anticipated iPhone revenue came from primarily in Greater China and accounts for most of our revenue shortfall for the year-over-year revenue decline. So it's mostly China that's to blame for the fact that Apple isn't selling as many iPhones, not the fact that, battery replacements cost too much, but it does seem like people are getting Apple fatigue. It does seem like the new iPhones are too expensive, and I mean, they kind of have to slow down their older iPhones because most people are just sitting on their older iPhones saying this is good enough, like Rikus, and not even upgrading at all. So like, how do you get those people to upgrade? You drop the freaking floor on performance for those phones and then you force them to upgrade. It's the win-win move for Apple. So of course they're gonna do that. And yeah, Apple not doing so great, but who would have thunk when you release a $1,200 phone and nobody buys it? Do you have a smartwatch? I do. Well, it appears that Google has finally filed an FCC filing to get a smartwatch that relies on hand gestures to navigate the menus and all that kind of stuff. Originally, they had done this, but found that there was some issues with receiving the information from your hand because that the signals that they were sending weren't high power enough. They tried to appeal to the FCC being like, yo, let us use higher power. The FCC was like, okay, but then Facebook was like, nah, fam, you're not doing this on our watch. And then Google was like, okay, but what if we drop it by a bit? And then Facebook was like, yeah, that's cool. And so the FCC has finally approved it, and it looks like we might be getting gesture control for smartwatches sometime soon, but I'm not sure why this is useful at all. Like, I get the idea that smartwatches are like so that you don't have to interact with your hand, but at the same time, I'm okay interact. Like, if I'm using my hands for gestures, why can't I touch the screen? I don't understand that. Like, if I can move my hand like this in front of it to indicate that I want it to switch music, I can just tap the next button on the music player as well. I get, maybe, I don't know, I don't understand this.
Actually, tapping seems lower effort than trying to.
Exactly. Trying to navigate with hand gestures that you're inevitably going to screw up seems like way harder of a deal. Maybe it's like when you don't even have to look at your phone and you can just do it when it's by your side. You just be like, I'm not doing anything.
Yes, but does tapping make you look like a magician?
That's true. It does make you look cool. Google's onto something here. I can't wait for this to be implemented in the Apple Watch after they steal the technology.
I guess that could also integrate very well, like if they eventually get around to holographic displays.
Holographic displays, or if they put it in other devices.
Yes.
Like if they put it in the Google Home.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
That would be nice in my, like...
So you don't have to say something, you could just be like, get away, bad music, next track, next track. If they implement it into something like that, that could be cool, but in a smartwatch, just touch it. Then we mentioned yesterday that Event Horizons, which is NASA's probe that has visited the farthest object in the solar system, well, we got the images back. It looks like a snowman. It's kind of cool. And then China, they sent a probe to the backside of the moon, far side of the moon. I got yelled at for calling it the dark side of the moon in the last time I talked about this. I know it's not dark there, but that doesn't mean it's not colloquially called the dark side of the moon. Get over your pretentious high horse, please. Anyways, the point behind that is that China actually successfully soft landed on the far side of the moon using some relay communication because we don't have a direct line of sight to the backside of the moon, so the way of landing probes isn't very easy. So they launched the satellite back in, I believe, March to give the coordinates, and the first pictures from the backside of the moon from a probe that's landed on it are right here. It's kind of cool. It looks like rocks in space. And then speaking of countries doing things, Japan has made it illegal to resell game keys as well as certain save editors or distributing save editors. This is passed in December, an illegal amendment to a previous amendment that they already had. The Unfair Competition Prevention Act is what they had. So the report is if you're found guilty of either of these things, you can be fined up to 5 million yen, which is about $46,000, or a prison sentence of just under 5 years. Both rosy peaches right there. So game save editors and reselling game keys, no longer a beneficial thing to do in Japan in case you want to. Get out of that business while you still can. And then talking about China again, they have finally started to approve brand new video games after a 9-month freeze. So the regulatory boards in China have to approve each video game that goes on market in China. They were restructuring that part of the government, so there was 9 months where they didn't approve anything. And apparently, like even Monster Hunter World, when that initially came out back in, what was it, January of last year, it had to get pulled from shelves because of all of this. Like it was never ended up being approved. So from the tweet that they sent out on December 29th, they've already approved 80 new games, 67 on mobile, 6 PC games, and 1 console game. Kind of cool, China. And then are you on Windows 10? Good, you're one of the many more people who are on Windows 10 than Windows 7, as it now has surpassed Windows 7's market share for the first time with 39.22% of the market, whereas Windows 7 has 36.9%. Go Windows 10, spyware, free spyware, everybody, give it up. Well, Google Chrome is supposed to get a native dark mode in Windows 10. Finally, there's ways to do this before, but now it's going to be native that you can have a dark theme. It looks pretty dope. Dark theme all the way. Make sure to implement it on everything that you have. And with that being said, that's the last bit of hot news that I have for you today. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of the tech-related content. This video is brought to you by you and the fact that you watch the ads on this video. Thanks so much. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too.